All right. We are live. Good evening, citizen. Uh, so, this episode, we're going to have some fun talking about equipment. There's been some stories come out in the last few days about older equipment. And the first one, I'll link to all this in the show notes. The first one was an article that Larry shared with me from Vice.com, which Vice is kind of progressive, kind of left wing website, but the headline is farmers are buying 40-year-old tractors because they're actually repairable. John Deere makes it difficult to repair its new tractors without specialized software, so an increasing number of farmers are buying older models. Um, so they're talking. This is specifically about John Deere. So they're saying when a brand new John Deere tractor breaks down, you need a computer to fix it. When a John Deere tractor manufactured in 1979 breaks down, you can repair it yourself or buy another old John Deere tractor. Farming equipment like television, cars, and even toothbrushes now often come saddled with a computer. That computer often comes with digital rights management software that can make simple repairs an expensive pain in the ass. As reported by the Minnesota Star Tribune, farmers have figured out a way around the problem, buying tractors manufactured 40 years ago before the computers took over. So they've put a little video with it, and down near the end of the article, farmers are at the center of Right to Repair, a grassroots consumer movement that says people should have the right to repair their own stuff. When a John Deere tractor breaks down, John Deere requires its owner to take it to an authorized dealer for repairs. Apple wants the same for its iPhones and recently told Congress that people would hurt themselves if they repaired their own stuff. Democratic presidential candidates Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have both called for national right to repair laws. Then there's another article from a different outlet, which is called thedrive.com. And this first sentence, there's a looming issue for many of America's farmers, and it's got nothing to do with climate or trade deals or the EPA. No, what's really starting to hurt is the price of equipment, more specifically, large machines like tractors, harvesters, and the like. A new tractor in 2019 can cost as much as a damn house, and with DIY fixes often stymied by prop,
Proprietary.
thank you, appreciate that, software, and a lack of available parts, dealer repairs can stretch into the mid five figure range. I'm gonna learn to read here at some point. So as the Minneapolis Star Tribune reports, more farmers are taking a page out of the Car Enthusiast Handbook and seeking out gently used, simpler, and much cheaper tractors from the 1970s and 1980s. And so they go in and they also repeat this right to repair. Now, I think there's two issues here. One is, yes, I'm sure there's proprietary software that John Deere has because John Deere builds their tractors a specific way. Now, I can tell you that about 100 yards from my house right now sits a Massey Ferguson tractor that was built in 2014. And my brother in law last summer, I believe was out brush hogging and it just quit. It just shut off because it has a diesel particulate filter on it. Well, we're not fixing that, so there it's set in the field and it's not moving. And so the service truck had to come out. The guy had to do this, that, and the other with the computer and service this and fix that. So I don't know exactly. I think John Deere's getting hammered on this just because they're the name. I don't know that there's ever been a country song written about a Massey Ferguson. John Deere's the brand, and they seem to be the ones that are being hammered on this particular issue. But so what they're trying to do with this right to repair is to get manufacturers to give up um, access to their uh,
Proprietary software.
proprietary software and their I know there's a word for it, but their codes and their diagnostics and their give up all of this information so that anybody can work on that equipment. Now, I mean, I know enough about cars and trucks that at least in the automotive market, you've got plenty of aftermarket software that can go in, just like the J Pro that TA uses. You hook a J Pro up to a truck, it gives you almost everything that a Freightliner computer will give you. Um, so maybe that is different in the world of agriculture and farming implements that they don't have their version of a J Pro. But y'all, the elephant in the room here that nobody seems to want to talk about is there's a reason that these diesel tractors and farm implements have all of this crazy expensive software on them. It's diesel emissions controls. Uh, there's no way, there's no way that John Deere, Massey Ferguson, Caterpillar are going to come up with this nonsense of their own volition. I just can't see the bean counters at these large corporations saying, well, I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to spend about $1 billion developing this software to make these things run this certain. There's no way, absolutely no way. And so this article caught our eye because that's what we're doing. We are buying trucks. Our preferred models are from 1999 to 2007. The 99 to 03s are really getting hard to find in decent shape. There are some out there, but boy, they're hard to find. But there's there's pretty good selection of 05, 06, and 07, especially in Freightliner, Columbias, and Cascadias, that are out there in the $10,000 to $12,000 range that we can pick up. We can put 10 or 15 in them. We can get them on the road. We can get them legal, roadworthy, efficient, reliable for next to nothing, comparatively speaking, for a tenth of the cost of a brand new truck. And then we can put a driver in these and be incredibly profitable. But this, I just don't understand why everybody's so terrified to talk about the real issue. Because if it weren't for these tyrannical, despotic regulations, cars, trucks, tractors, and lawnmowers would probably cost half of what they do now. So it's just interesting to me that nobody wants to talk about the government intervention that's creating this. And I have seen, mainly in some Landstar groups, really, I've not ever received a piece of feedback to this podcast that says, I just can't believe you're running that junk. Nobody that listens to us on purpose responds that way. Now there's a bunch of trolls that will say, they make fun of us and they criticize us and they chastise us because we drive old equipment that's not shiny and pretty and it's not polished. And but I think we should talk a little bit, kind of dig into that with this model because it works. You may not want to drive a 2007, and that's fine. I mean, if you want to drive a 17, go get you one. But we're operating 06s and 07s, and we've got one 2010, and I'm not a real big fan of that truck right now. But we do this because it works every time. It doesn't work part of the time. It works every time, every single time. Get a truck, get it roadworthy, get it legal, get it efficient, and it works every single time without fail. So why don't you, because I mean, we're circling back here. We've talked about this before, but I don't want to belabor the point, but it's such an important point to be made because just last week we got an email from a guy and he was hungry for information and he was wanting to hear what we had to say, but I could hear in his questions that he kind of wasn't getting it. We've had a couple of those. And so I think we just need to roll back through this and make sure everybody understands why we're buying these trucks. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of obvious reasons, and that is that um, we can make a smaller investment, have a good, reliable piece of equipment. Um, our customers, which is the primary reason we're here, they don't care whether we show up in a 2001 truck or a 2019 truck. As long as we do what we say we're going to do, when we say we're going to do it, they could care less.
Mm-hmm.
So and I guess the root of this goes back to some of the very basic things we talked about at the very beginning when you brought me in, and that is that I don't have a emotional connection to trucking. I could care less what brand we had, what year we had. None of that matters to me. What matters to me is what makes the numbers work. And, just look back at 2019, a difficult year from a rate standpoint, a difficult year in the fact that because of 2018 being so crazy, we had excess capacity in 2019. And we had almost 1,000 trucking companies that went bankrupt last year. Now, I can't document this, but I can almost guarantee you that not one of those 1,000 truck companies went out of business. Went out of business because they were driving older model trucks. So our business model supports that because it's reliable. It makes sense. Farmers are when you think about a farmer, you think about someone who's practical, good common sense. I mean, those guys are salt of the earth. Okay, they their whole existence depends on doing things that produce results but aren't extravagant in cost. And just the fact that they are, basically agreeing with our model that it's better for them to do their personal business in older tractors because new tractors are too expensive and they're too expensive to work on and they're too complicated to work on themselves. That's exactly the reason that we don't buy new trucks. Couple that with the idea that it doesn't make any sense to have a cost of doing business that is 125, 150,000 versus 30,000, 40 maybe at the most. When both those
Right.
things do the exact same, provide the exact same service to our customer, allow us to do a lot of maintenance ourselves, or at least get maintenance work done at reasonable prices at places that aren't specialized. You've heard me say it over and over and over again. The reason I choose Freightliner in Detroit is because I don't know how many locations of TEAs and Petros there are. I'm guessing there's 1,000. I don't know. Whatever there is, every one of those is a Freightliner service point. So we
Right.
can go in there on most occasions, and the driver can go, grab a motel next door, and we can have the truck fixed while he's on his 10-hour break and he's back on his way. Now, occasionally that doesn't happen, but if you're driving a new truck where it has to go to Peterbilt, or it has to go to Volvo, or it has to go to Kenworth, or whatever, that's not going to happen. The guy's going to be down for several days. You're going to not have freight. You're going to have drivers that are upset. I mean, we have so few situations where drivers are not able to make money because their truck's down. It's rare. It did not happen on a regular basis whatsoever. So these are all the reasons why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It not caring what brand it is, not caring what it looks like in terms of how much chrome was on it, or whether or not it's got a no long hood or whatever. It just gives me this outside looking in, neutral approach where I only look at it from the number standpoint, and from a business standpoint. And I mean, let's face it, if some of these trucking companies that failed last year had looked at things that way, they'd probably still be in business.
Right.
But I just can't imagine running a business and paying $150,000 per copy for the tool when I can go buy the same tool that does the same job
Mm-hmm.
and actually cost me less to maintain for what'd you say, 10% of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even, I
And
mean,
here's the other thing. And here's the other thing. In 1 year, that new truck's going to depreciate in 1 year more than we pay to get a truck on the road. I can sell. We don't. I could sell any one of our trucks 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road and get back what I put in it. Zero
right.
depreciation. Zero depreciation. It just doesn't make sense. If you're a businessman, you understand what I'm saying. You know, if
Right.
you're a moron, you don't. Okay. So and that's really what it comes down to.
Well, I mean, humans, we love to own our bad decisions, and our bad philosophies. I mean, I don't know who owns it, but I've heard Dave Ramsey say it. Talking about a baby. Yeah, I know it stinks, but it's warm and it's mine. You know,
My
and
snakes.
so I mean, just even now to this John Deere thing. Proprietary software. Okay, well, our 2010 emissions truck is down right now, right? And we took it to a TA, Freightliner Service Point, and the guy spent 8 hours on it, $900.
Mhm.
Um, couldn't do anything with it. So as a $1,400 tow bill later, we just said, all right, we're within 150 miles of our D truck shop where we have a relationship, where I can call the service manager on his cell phone, uh, and he answers. And within an hour and a half, he calls me on Friday and he says, "Yeah, we'll be all right. We'll take care of it Monday." He had the confidence, but of course he has access to a whole lot more information than the TA guy does. Now I'll give the TA guy this. I mean, he was relentless. Hey, he was on that truck for I think 7.5 hours and never took a break. Never walked away from it. Um, you don't run into that very often. A lot of times they'll throw their hands up but this guy was really, really thrashing on his truck, trying to come up with an answer. He was calling people. And so I appreciate all the effort that he put into it, but it was $900 wasted. And so with the tow bills to get it off the road and to get it to the shop, we're $3,000 in this truck and ain't got nothing done yet. We will, they'll probably have it fixed Monday, Tuesday at the latest. But I don't enjoy spending that money, and I would rather us come up with a way to prevent that in some way or avoid that. But that's one truck payment, y'all.
Well, I looked
That
that we got that truck last year, and we've probably talked about it. It was a unique situation. We had a driver that just didn't have the money to keep putting into it, and I just looked at the records. Okay, we still have less money in that truck. Everything we've done, and we've done everything to that truck, as far as getting it modified to our way of doing business. We've changed all the tires out and everything. We still have less in that truck. We've had it for a year now. Okay, um, somebody drove it all last year and made $70,000 to $80,000. Okay, I made half that last year. We still have less than that, less than the truck's worth. We could sell the truck right now for more than what we got into it, even with what you're talking about right now.
yeah,
We're still under what the market value of that truck is. So again, when you're paying $10,000, $15,000 or less for a truck, you can absorb this kind of thing because you're not you haven't spent so much for the truck that you can't afford to keep it on the road. It's like the people that go out and buy a house and they spend all of their budget on the house, and you drive by a year later and still ain't got curtains in the windows. Okay, there's no bushes outside. There's no car in the driveway because they've spent everything they can on the house, but
hmm
now they can't enjoy the house because they can't afford to do anything to the house. Well, if you're starting out in the trucking business and you spend all of your, not just the money you have, but if you can't afford to maintain your truck because your truck payment, what kind of business is that? You know, so I mean, we first of all paid cash for the truck. Second of all of that expense last year, still we would have paid 2 or 3 times that if we'd bought that truck new.
Yeah.
And because we don't have any money in it, these occasional breakdowns aren't an issue. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how more to say it. I mean,
And it's the most expensive truck in our fleet to work on.
it is by
You know,
far, by far.
it's
You know,
it's crazy.
it's our experiment truck. It's not what we are going to recommend that you buy. We'll never buy another one. We just got this so cheap that I couldn't. I mean, I could have sold it the next day and tripled my money. You know. So
Yeah.
I thought, and we bailed out a good person, and gave the person a job, and it was a win-win-win situation. You know. And but looking back, I mean, well, now that we know, I mean, not looking back, I mean, I would have still done it because,
Yeah.
again, good for everybody involved. But we now know that Cascadia is not going to be in our future because they're too expensive to work on. You know,
Mm.
we can get
Yeah.
Centuries and Columbias, that are much simpler to work on, and we don't have these issues. And the TA would have fixed that truck that night.
Oh yeah.
Would not have had to tow it down to Detroit shop. So, but anyway, we're learning the lesson so we can teach you. You know, buy like Chris said, buy a '99 to 2007 Columbia or Century, okay, with a Detroit Series 60 engine, and that's the lowest cost, highest reliability, lowest maintenance entry you're going to have into this business, and pay cash for it.
And I'm sure it's hard for some people, I'm sure, to grasp what I'm about to say because I'm mechanically inclined. I can turn wrenches. But y'all, these trucks are so simple. And I've learned more. I mean, I learned a lot when I had my truck. It was a Century. I learned a lot. Um, but I've learned so much now, um, you know, as we've bought these trucks and being connected with a good mechanic, like the one that was out here in my driveway till 2 o'clock this morning in the freezing cold. Um, you can learn so much along the way that there's really, I don't know of a single special tool unless it's something for the engine specifically. I don't know that there's a special tool of any kind you have to work on this truck. A T25 Torx bit, some screwdrivers, and a socket set, and you can just about fix anything on one of these Century Columbias. They're so simple,
And we can buy all the parts for it online for 50% of what the dealer charges.
Oh yeah,
There's nothing for that truck we can't buy online.
Get stuff
Nothing.
on Amazon, eBay, so many different places to get stuff
for
Yeah.
half. For half.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, half of what the truck stop charges and, a little less than what we got a pretty decent Freightliner dealer around here, and their prices they're not exorbitant.
Well,
Now
but we've developed that relationship. If you go to Freightliner and you've never walked in there before,
yeah,
they're going to give you the first column price, okay?
Yeah.
Now
Won't tear your head off.
we're a fleet, that helps.
Yeah.
We're with Landstar, that helps because we get to use their, and then in your case where we've developed this relationship with this, we're kind of almost family pricing there,
Yeah.
that, everybody's not going to get that. Believe me, if I walk into Freightliner down in Laredo, Texas, I promise you we'll be paying, sticker, okay, maybe plus 10% because I think Blano.
You work on your Spanish. Um, it's just a matter of, do you want the greatest? It's a choice. It comes down to a choice. Do you want the greatest chance of success and the least amount of risk? Or do you want to look good to people that you probably wouldn't like if you knew them? You know, I'm a boy. I like cars. I get it. I would like, I wouldn't be upset to drive a nice, pretty, shiny truck. That wouldn't make me unhappy. But I'm not willing to trade the security of having a truck that almost anybody can fix for the sake of the style, or I mean, because you can make a Century. I mean, you can put a nice seat in it, and you can put a steering wheel wrap on it, and you can make it comfortable. Uh, that's pretty simple. And again, you can do that a whole lot cheaper than you can go buy $150,000 truck. And and maybe it's true of aerodynamic Peterbilts. I see a lot of the. I think they have a name for them, but the line of Peterbilt and Kenworth that are like the T680 and the I don't even know all the numbers now. Back in the day, it was a Kenworth T2000 and I think a Pete 387. Those are the aerodynamic models of Pete and Kenworth, and they probably are a little more refined than. Well, there ain't no doubt about it. They are more refined. They do have better creature comfort. They do ride better. They
Well,
probably
let
are
me say something.
engineered a little
Let me say
better.
something about that. If you're buying a truck for you and your wife to go, if in travel the country and try to make money trucking, and you need that, that creature thing, I get that, but still, you don't have to buy a new one. You can
Right.
buy one that's 10 years old. Instead of
Right.
spending 150,000 for it, spend 50,000 for it. Okay. Now, again, I'm not going to tell you to do that. If this is your first truck, okay, I'm never going to tell you to do this. But if you already got a truck and maybe you've got money in the bank, I'm not against you. But here's our situation: we put drivers in trucks. Okay, none of us are taking our wives, and we're not retiring. It's not a motorhome that we make money with.
Right.
Okay, it's a
Right.
business that we make money with. All right, the people we hire want to make the most money they can possibly make. All right. The reason that we can pay our drivers what we pay them is because we keep our costs low. You see, here's what pisses me off about truck drivers: they hate money. They prove it every day.
Right.
Follow one around. They hate money because all they do is spend it. That's all. I mean, I don't have to give you all the examples of what drivers spend money on, but why not keep? What's wrong with saving money? What's wrong with having money in the bank and driving I don't want to say shitty truck, but I mean, and look, the truck that I bought, before I knew what I was doing, but still out there, when that truck pulls up to a fuel stop and it's been through the truck wash, I've had many people come by, ask me about it, and I tell them what year it is, and they're surprised that it looks that good for
Hmm.
an '07 truck. So just because it's an '07 doesn't mean it has to look like it came out of a junkyard.
Right.
You know, you can paint a truck for $4,500. All right. If you go pay 10 grand for it and you put another 10 grand in it and you've got the money, okay, go take and paint it. You're not throwing your money away because that truck is never going to depreciate beyond what you've put in it. Okay? Even
Right.
if you put a motor in it for the next couple of years, it's still not going to depreciate. But first of all, if you keep it, that motor's going to last you 1,000,000 miles. Okay? Even if the truck were wrecked in a year later, the insurance company will pay you for that motor because of the improvement you did to it. So there's absolutely zero reason to not buy an older truck and spend the money to fix it up. But the caveat here is pay cash for it. Pay cash for it. It doesn't do you any good to go into business for yourself and go borrow the money and get $35,000 in a truck that you have a payment on that you haven't helped yourself there. Stay as a company driver, save the money, then go get them. Then when you've got 20, 30 grand in the bank, go buy a truck Um, do what you need to do to make it, safe and roadworthy, and go make money. The good thing about this business is you can make money on it's not like opening a store where you got to go advertise and get customers.
Right.
The day you buy a truck tomorrow, you make money. Okay?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. The business is there. All right? There's no wait between the time you get your truck and the time you start making money. There's zero wait. You haul a load tomorrow. I mean, you might have to wait to get settled, depending on where you
Yeah.
work, but still, you made that money. You could advance on that settlement the next day. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, I was talking to my niece. Um, we had a surprise 80th birthday party for my dad, and so she whipped up a bunch of stuff, and her they have uh, a little restaurant. Started out as a cookie shop called Moonlight Cookies, and they would feed stoners and nurses and doctors. Uh, they would make and deliver fresh cookies from like 10 at night till like 3 in the morning. And then they got a little space, and then they changed and started adding stuff to the menu. It's amazing food. And so she and I are chatting back and forth, and we're so spoiled in this industry because it's so easy to get revenue. She's talking about how her and Anna go in and worked all day and made $15. You know, I mean, the shop was open all day and they made $15 because that was the only people that walked through the door. You know, and here it, it is so absurdly easy to get four, five, $6,000 a week cash money. Pay your expenses out of that. But we're so spoiled because it's literally so easy. Find a load, put it in the trailer, deliver it, get paid, find a load. But,
Let me interrupt you for a second, because you made me remember something. Another way I can prove that truck drivers hate money. Get behind one of them, see how fast they drive.
oh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Look and see how much. Look, see where they fuel. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All the things that we do to improve the fuel mileage in our truck, most people won't do that. Okay. Either they don't understand it, don't believe it, don't think it matters. Okay, because fuel's only. Fuel is going to be your number one expense. Okay. Even if you can afford to pay an extra $5 or $10 or $15,000 a year for fuel, why would you do it? Why would you voluntarily give $5,000 more to Pilot Flying J instead of yourself? But that's what you do when you drive faster than you need to drive, or you buy the wrong tires because you want the cheap ones because you can't afford to buy the ones that give you better fuel mileage, and you don't understand the fact that every day that tire runs, it costs you money. The cost that you pay to get them mounted is not the cost of the tire. Why would you not have a fuel purchasing strategy? Why would you just buy fuel anywhere? Because you hate money. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
You hate money. You'd rather just do it the easy way than do it the smart way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad.
And there's proof.
I'm glad that most of the time for us that TA and Petro's the cheapest fuel because I prefer their setup, restaurant, shower, parking lot. I just personal preference, prefer that over Pilot Flying J and Love's. But I am not, under any circumstances, going to pay 10 cents more for a gallon of diesel at at Petro and TA, because it's my personal preference of a place to stop.
What's worse than that? Most guys have no idea what fuel costs. Okay. They buy fuel when the gauge says buy fuel.
Yeah.
Okay. Forget that they've passed 13 places today that they could have bought fuel cheaper than where they end up buying it because they didn't even bother to look. Okay.
Right.
It's one thing to have a preference, but my preference would change with the price. You know, I
Yeah.
was getting ready to. We have. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to embarrass him. But we had a driver. One of our drivers this week bought fuel way out of system, way out of network. Now he didn't buy a lot, and at first I thought that's really weird. Well, I got to looking, and that was the cheapest fuel he bought all week. He found that on the app, and
Mm-hmm.
there was no rebate. There was no um, Landstar discount that was taken off of it, but the cost of the fuel was lower than the cost of fuel we've been buying with the rebate at other places. So at first I thought it was a mistake. Then I realized no, he had looked at the app and picked that place,
Mm-hmm.
to fuel up. And it was some fuel stop. I mean, it wasn't even a truck stop. It was a fuel stop only.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I commend him. I mean, the guy bought the best fuel he could buy. That was the cheapest fuel he bought all week. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But how many people don't do that? How many people have no idea that there's a 50 cents difference in fuel from one corner of an exit to the other because they don't bother to look, you know? And then I want to then they want to get on Facebook and tell me how you can't make any money in this business. It's impossible to drive a truck and make money.
Yeah.
And that over dramatization of their victimhood,
It's just so, well, I mean, I remember this was probably 16, 17 years ago, and a guy that we're friends, and he and his wife had went and bought a Peterbilt, and I think they leased it onto one of those like Forward Air or something like that. And I said, what are you doing? You can't make money as an owner operator. I said that out loud, you know? And it was pure ignorance. And maybe that's part of it is one, especially in America. Once you pick a team or you adopt some philosophy, you'll hold on to it for dear life and do anything you can to defend it and never question it because you don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to be considered outside of the cool kids. Um, but y'all, I've thought and believed a lot of really stupid stuff in my life, um, and was passionately stupid. I was passionately wrong. Uh, just being willing to look at things in a different light. And sometimes, yeah, it would be nice if we could go back to the good old days when you could go to a dealership and order anything you wanted. Man, you could spec these trucks in any way you wanted, um and they would run 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 million miles without many problems if you maintained them. And unfortunately, those days are over. I wish they weren't, but that's where we're at. And these trucks that we have in our fleet right now, with the exception of the Cascadia, I mean, as long as the frame don't break, I, I mean, as long as the frame is intact, everything else is serviceable.
Yep,
Everything.
yep. There's very little things on a truck you can't fix, you know, which is kind of why, when we look for trucks, I don't worry too much about the motor because we know exactly what it costs to fix the motor. I get more concerned about how it was treated, all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I'd rather buy a truck knowing it needs a motor than buy one that somebody else has already fixed the motor.
Yeah.
Because we don't have
Yeah.
any idea what they've done to it,
Yeah.
what kind of parts they use and all that sort of stuff. So,
And I never, until we started working on some of these trucks, and I think it started with your truck, never dreamed what a difference motor mounts make.
oh, yeah.
A relatively simple, I mean, it's a big job, but a relatively simple fix can completely change the personality of a truck.
Yeah.
And it's just, of course, it's like what is it? The frog in the boiling water. They get progressively worse over time, and you don't realize until maybe you get in a different
A
truck and
different truck. Yeah.
you get back in yours and you're like, wow, this is, and
Kind,
then you
kind of like
put
the
motor,
steering, kind of like the steering gear on my truck.
y'all, listen, I want to tell y'all something. Okay. I had never driven the metrosexual, and he's going to put me in it for some reason. And he says so nonchalantly, um, let me know what you think of that steering. I'm like, okay, y'all. I mean, I was driving down the road like it to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. That steering gear was it was wore slap out. And I mean, I worked so hard driving that truck for a week. Of course, he got used to it. All those thousands of miles going Ohio to Texas and back, and he just got used to it. And I was bobtail. I bobtailed that thing, and that I was all over the road. And I thought, God, how in the world did you hold that thing in the road? And the first thing I did was ordered a steering box and had that put on the next weekend. Cause God Almighty, what a handful!
I got back in about a week later, and I thought I was driving a new truck. I'm like, damn.
Yeah. Oh, that was, and of course, we working on one of the trucks now, and driver gets out of it, and I get in it, and it just drives like crap. It's pulling to the right, and it's running the steer tires off of it, and he never said a word, but I just either he doesn't like understand, or it just started getting worse a little bit at a time, and he just didn't realize it because he never said, "Hey, man, this truck drives like crap now." And I get in it, and I've got an eighth of a turn to the left just to hold it straight. Um, you know, I, that's I don't know. Get somebody else to drive your truck every once in a while, or something, to get you out of that. Uh, to recognize some of those noises, because your truck will tell you when it's got a problem. You just have to be paying attention, and you have to listen. And this truck we just bought, we just got out of the shop, had to put a clutch in it. We went ahead and put motor mounts and a new exhaust, and it sounded, the clutch in this truck was so bad it didn't slip, but all the springs were coming apart. And so when you'd let off the throttle, it sounded like the Jake brake was on. Larry bought it, drove it for the first time. He's like, "Well, it sounds like the Jake brake's on." And then I started driving it, and you'd let off the gas, and it would make this god awful noise. And turn out it was just a clutch pad. So we put clutch in it and motor mounts in it, and y'all, it's a dream to drive this truck now. It's quiet and it's smooth and it ride. What such a difference a relatively small change can make. But you can do that stuff. Because, I mean, let's think about this. I see a lot of guys, they'll say, well, I'm going to buy a truck that's got 4 or 5, 600,000 miles on it, and I'm going to pay anywhere from $35,000 to $55,000 for that truck. Okay. Your motor mounts are wore out. At 500,000 miles, your motor mounts are probably wore out. Your spring bushings are probably wore out. Your kingpins are getting close to being worn out.
Balancer.
Yeah, your damper balancer is on the crankshaft is worn out. There's
all the bushings.
$10,000 right there to make that truck right, to get it to where it's not going to destroy your tires, to where it's not going to vibrate your fillings out of your teeth. Well, you're paying 55 and we're paying 10, and we can put $10,000 into a truck and do all this little stuff that I'm sure the guy that we bought that truck off of, whether or not he knew that clutch was bad and making that noise, he wasn't going to spend that money. He sold the truck, and went and bought something else.
He bought a Peterbilt. He bought a new Peterbilt. I bought the truck from him. We met at my bank. I wrote him a check. He left my bank with cash in his hand and was driving to the Peterbilt dealership to buy a new truck.
Wow. Easily $130,000,
I bought his truck for $10,000. Okay. We have exactly 20,000 in it right now, including what you just did. We put all new tires on it and wheels. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the work you've done, and we've got exactly $20,000 in that truck as we speak. You're driving it right now. What else does it need? Good to go, right?
Needs a rear heater core. That's it.
So we're
And
21 grand
some
in
plastic,
this truck.
I got to put some plastic dash pieces in it. Just little nitpicky stuff. I'm gonna change a couple switches and, a mirror. He's got. I got to get a picture of this. The right side, the driver's side mirror, kind of shakes. And there's a piece of folded up paper stuffed on the top of the mirror inside the housing, which we assumed was just to keep it from moving. Well, something caught my eye, and I looked, and there's one of those red shop rags stuffed in behind the the mirror glass to help hold it, y'all. And it's the actuator for that goes the up and down is broken, right, y'all? That's a $20 part. It's a $20 part, and maybe a 30-minute repair. I mean, $75, but we've got folded up paper and a shop rag stuffed in behind it.
But to get back to my point, $21,000, that truck's going to have a driver in it in about a week. Okay. Mm-hmm. Driver's going to make what, $1,500 a week?
Yeah.
Easy. I'm going to make $900 to $1,000 a week, and we got 20 grand in that truck.
Yeah. And in 20 weeks, give or take, it's completely paid for.
Yep. So now go out here and buy yourself a new truck. Go spend 70, 80 grand for a truck. And we'll haul the same freight you do. And look at my bottom line. Look at your bottom line. Which one of you, and if 2020 is as shitty as 2019 was, which of us is still going to be in business at the end of the year? Yeah. Who's going to be out bad-mouthing the trucking industry about how you can't make any money? And guys, we look. I'm going to brag on Chris a little bit. He was a guest on a YouTube thing this week with some guy named Boogie, and I mean, it was really, really good. If Chris, tell them how to find it because they need to listen to it.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's L Boogie on YouTube, but I'll put you a link in there.
But anyway, and L Boogie was questioning Chris about us giving away our game. He said, "You give this a game away every time y'all talk?" And bottom line is we do. Every week, or however often we can do these, we tell everybody that wants to listen exactly how we do what we're doing, okay? And it's just amazing how people still think that we're lunatics, that we don't have any freaking idea what we're talking about, and that, but I can sit here and tell you we're not going out of business, Matter of fact, we're not shrinking, we're growing. We're going to double the size of our fleet in 2020. How many other fleets are saying that? Read the trade journals. Let me know how that looks for you.
Well, I thought about something too when you're talking about the customers, right? So I run a dedicated. One of my runs every week is dedicated, so I go to a lot of the same customers.
And by the way, I'm gonna bust your ass for that because you told this Boogie guy that you hated doing dedicated freight.
No, I do.
And I did, and I was the only one like doing dedicated freight.
Well,
and I thought to myself, that son of a bitch is doing dedicated freight.
But it's not dedicated the way you do it. I still
semantics.
Semantics. But what made me think of that was. So over the last, since I started here in March of 18, we've had a total of 6 trucks in our fleet. I've driven every one of them, all of them, right?
Yes.
So I have gone into these customers in all 6 of these trucks, and nobody has ever, not one time, and I've kind of wondered, not one time has everybody said, well, you drive a lot of different trucks. Nobody's ever mentioned or even, I'm sure they've noticed that, I pull in 1 week, my truck's blue, and the next week it's white, and then it's black, and then it's green. but I'm the common denominator.
Right.
You know, as long as I show up, everything's okay. Um, but it just doesn't matter uh, what truck I'm driving.
Well, and
You know,
two, I mean, let's face it, they see the back of the trailer. You know,
right?
most of your customers don't have any idea what truck you're driving, right?
You turned your video off somehow.
There we go. Is that better?
There you go.
All right. I mean, most customers don't have any idea what you're driving. They're
Right.
they are only seeing the back of your trailer.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Most of mine are small little contractor places, so they do see me. You know, they look out the front window and here he comes. The trailer's always the same, but it's such a great point that in that respect, the driver's a lot more important than the brand or the
Right.
year model of the truck. You know,
So
why
the
should
only
that?
the only
It only
person that
matters
cares.
to you.
The
It
only
only
person that
matters to the
matters is
driver.
you. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So you got to decide whether your ego is worth more than your wallet. That's what it comes down to. And like I say, I maintain that most truck drivers hate money. So that answers that question right there. Okay. Talk about your truck. Give me all those Billy Big Rig stories at the liar's counter. Show me your bank statement. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because they'll fight you to the death. Uh, over the carrier you're leased to, or if you're leased, or if you've got your own authority. All this stuff, it don't matter. It just doesn't matter. What matters is what you do for the customer and how well you do it for the customer and how many customers you can get. That's all that matters. It was a guy in a um, Landstar group that was whining about third party shippers or third party freight. Well, now this is the same guy. Okay, he's whining in this post because Landstar agents don't have enough direct freight. And this is the same guy 2 or 3 months ago that wanted Landstar to force the agents, like the agent that has my load, same every week. Well, those ought to be posted. You shouldn't be able to use the same BCO every week. I'm like, hey, buddy, I earned that relationship. And if you try to take it away from me, that's stealing. That makes you a thief. And I don't like thieves. I earned that business. You can't have it. You can't take it away from me. So the I don't
But
care.
but Chris, he bought a truck. He's entitled. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a truck driver. He's entitled to $3 a mile. He's entitled to not ever have a detention, never have a bad load. He's entitled because he spent the money to buy a truck. What we say last week about what was my quote? In trucking, we have capacity and no
Oh,
competition.
yeah.
Here's a perfect
Lots of
example.
capacity and very little competition.
He's a perfect
Yeah.
example.
I put that
Perfect.
quote in a Landstar group, and I'm sure you can imagine how well it went over. Uh, I look. I don't. As long as the bill is paid, I don't care who's paying the bill. So if it's C.H. Robinson or it's J.B. Hunt or it's Landstar or it's XPO, I could not care less who booked the freight. Um, would it, be nice if more of them were Landstar direct customers? I guess. I mean, but there's no discernible difference. Once the doors are closed and it's delivered, and I get paid what I get paid, regardless of who's, you
Well,
know,
here's my take on that. We have got good relationships with enough agents that I don't I don't tell them how to do their business. If they've got the relationship with these third party brokers to get that freight, and that's what they want to do, I can't question how they do their business. They're independent business people just like we are. I'm not going to tell Landstar to tell the agents, hey, don't bring any third party freight on here because that's not my business, number one. You know, it, I don't, if it weren't for the rate con, I wouldn't know where the freight came from anyway. If the rate's on the load board and I take it for what the load board says, why do I care where the freight came from. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
if you're just working off the load board and you're having to work with agents that you've never worked with before, and you don't know that you're dealing with a quality individual, that's a whole different situation. But my suggestion to the guys like that is get yourself a handful of agents and develop a relationship with them, and don't worry about where the freight comes from. The agent now becomes your ally, not the broker,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, what I have done for the majority of my time at Landstar is to have one relationship that pays most of my revenue, and then I can sprinkle stuff in around that. You know,
But
I
even
have
then,
that.
what you sprinkle around is it's the same agents over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. It's
Now,
always.
be nice if that one would give it to you without you having to go to the low board, but for some reason we can't get them to do that. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's the same one every week, so we still have the relationship. But I don't know. Look, we've beat this to death.
Yeah.
You cannot. You can only control you. That's it. You
Yep.
cannot, help what goes on in the industry with besides what you deal with on a daily basis. Do your job. Let everybody else do theirs. Trucking's not a travel agency. Things are going to break down. Things are going to happen. Loads are going to get canceled. That's part of it. Okay. If you're having more than your share of that, I'd say you're having something to do with it. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good place to shut it down. If y'all have questions, send us an email, Chris at blueribbonlogistics.com, Larry at blueribbonlogistics.com. We're on Facebook at Blue Ribbon Logistics. We're also on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel and give us a subscribe and a like. And until next time, everybody be safe. We'll talk to you later.
Good day.